Thanks so much for tuning in. We're so glad you're watching another episode of The Catholic View for Women. I'm Teresa Tomeo, along with my lovely, talented co-host, Elena Rodriguez, and of course, Janet Morana. And ladies, we need like 3 shows to talk about this topic. We are going to be discussing why your voices matter. Catholic women's voices, of course, all Catholics, but especially women, because we are sick and tired of the secular culture and the media hijacking or attempting to hijack our vote. There's so much out there that says unless you are voting pro-abortion, pro-contraception, pro-do anything with anybody you want, then your vote doesn't matter. That's not true. There are a lot of women, including you, I'm sure, in our viewing audience who feel differently and feel very strongly about these key issues in the faith that we must support as Catholics. So let's talk about the importance of voting. Janet, I know you're very involved in this at Priests for Life.
Extremely involved. And you know, Teresa, when you say hijack, because what they do is they make it sound like all women vote for pro-abortion candidates because they have to keep their rights to contraception and abortion going. And so therefore, I think women of faith feel like we're in the minority. They're afraid to speak out. They're afraid to speak up. And what we're going to do in this show, we're going to empower them with the information that they can speak up with their Catholic faith and know just how to do it, you know.
Do you think that I know I did as a Catholic woman, a pro-life voter, I felt really a huge shot in the arm in the 2016 election.
Right, yes. I mean, we nearly fell off a cliff, as you know. Had Hillary Clinton been elected, we wouldn't have had Gorsuch as a new Supreme Court justice. And also, too, you know, Priests for Life was very involved, like EWTN was, the Little Sisters of the Poor, with the HHS mandate. Correct. And by having President Trump, he then basically gave an order to the Department of HHS to said, fix it. Fix this. These groups should not have to provide abortion and contraception in their health care.
But I think that's an important point. The HHS mandate, a lot of people aren't even familiar with that term, even though for us it's like part of our language because we're so used to it. But the Health and Human Services mandate, which came under the Obama administration, demanding that all of these different entities, these religious entities, have to cover abortion and contraception in their health care packages, which is basically forcing them to go against their faith. Right. And the exception was really not an exception. And the court battles have been ongoing, but under the Trump administration, we were able to get some relief from that.
Well, it's been settled now. And what President Trump did in the department, and of course with Priests for Life, settled with us in a way that is permanent. It doesn't matter who's in the White House in 4 more years or 8 more years. It's a permanent solution. So I think that thanks be to God that, you know, President Trump went another step beyond that. But now with these midterm elections, you know, it's huge importance because people might be saying, oh, well, come on, we haven't gotten enough done. Well, the reason you haven't gotten enough done is, yes, we have a majority in the House. We have somewhat of a majority in the Senate, but not enough. Right. Not enough. They're saying we need 60 votes, and I like to say we need 62 votes because there's 2 women Republican senators who always vote pro-abortion. And so therefore we have a chance, we have a real chance in this election to get the majority in that Senate. And we know, you know, there's beautiful pro-life bills that have come out of the House, but they're sitting dormant over in the Senate because we can't get them to the floor for a vote and we don't have the votes.
And the chance we have doesn't come by easily. It comes after a lot of work.
So a lot of hard work.
We have to roll up our sleeves and get to work and bring that very particularly feminine perspective to politics. Why? Because, well, politics intrinsically is looking for the common good. And now the way that a woman looks for the common good is very different from the masculine view. Sometimes the masculine view will tend to be dominant, but the women, as we are nurturing, we try to look for something that nurtures everybody and bring
the whole person,
the whole person integrally. And so we build it up on virtue, which is service, as opposed to domination, service. Right. And when you change that perspective, it encompasses a completely different view. And this is something that all of us as women can bring to politics, whether it is if we are in office or whether it is if we are not in office, but we can help others to realize what is going on. But to do that, we have to be very informed. And we have to use resources and tools like the ones that we're going to show you during the show.
The other thing that often comes up, and Janet, again, going back to your work in years, and you and Father Frank, our spiritual advisor, Father Frank Pavone, you've been on the ground in this for so very long, and it drives me nuts, and I'm sure it does to you and Elena as well, just as women who vote and women who are involved on the front lines. This whole thing about health care and that the Planned Parenthoods of the world are the ones who are providing health care. Right. We have to get away from that and get people to understand that Planned Parenthood isn't about health care at all.
No, they're the #1 abortion provider.
Right. And last time I checked, killing people isn't health care. No. Call me crazy. I don't know, but I'm thinking, you know.
And then, of course, they like to play that big falsehood, like, oh, but we're involved with women's health and mammography.
They don't do mammograms.
They don't do mammograms. Show me one Planned Parenthood that has that equipment in their clinics.
They do referrals.
They do referrals,
right.
And yet they get all this Title X money, which, by the way, at this taping, President Trump just had a mandate now that's taken some of that Title X money away from Planned Parenthood, thanks be to God. But that's why, you know, Teresa and Elena, this election is so important. At Priest for Life, you know, we're doing webcasts. They can go to our website, voter training, on the ground things, you know, because just like in 2016 it was so important, this midterm election, we have a chance now. It's kind of like in a football game. We're like on the 20-yard line. And we got a chance not just to punt for that field goal, but we can get a touchdown. If we can get those votes in for that Senate and hold the House, there's so much that can be done. Because we have a president now who said, put a pro-life bill on my desk, I will sign it. So it's a huge opportunity. And what we want to start by teaching everyone here, using documents we've been using for a very long time, is that let's look to the bishops for a minute. The bishops did in 1998, and Archbishop Chaput was one of the key authors of this document called Living the Gospel of Life. And this document is foundational. We have it at Priest for Life on our website.
We'll also have it in their homework segment.
Right, they can go to gospellife.net to read the whole document. And of course, you know, at Priest for Life, we have a wonderful study guide, which of course we will make available in our homework session. They can contact us, we'll get it to them. But I'd like to read for you a key quote from that document. And it comes from paragraph number 36, and it goes like this. Women have a unique role in the transmission and nurturing of human life. They can best understand the bitter trauma of abortion and the hollowness and sterility at the heart of the vocabulary of choice. Therefore, we ask women to assume a special role in promoting the gospel of life with a new pro-life feminism. Women are uniquely qualified to counsel and support other women facing unexpected pregnancies, and they have been in the vanguard of establishing and staffing the more than 3,000 pregnancy aid centers in the United States. They, in a way more fruitful than others, can help elected officials to understand that any political agenda which hopes to uphold equal rights for all must affirm the equal rights of every child, born and unborn. They can remind us that our nation's declaration of God-given rights, coupled with the command, "Thou shalt not kill," are the starting points of true freedom. To choose any other path is to contradict our own identity as a nation dedicated to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Okay, so this is from, and this is a great document, by the way. It's really, really well and very clear. This was in 1998. So 20 years ago, and it's more timely now than ever before, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
You know, it's just like Teresa, you know, and Elena, our catechism clearly says we're supposed to be voting. The bishop's document here from 20 years ago clearly defines everything. There's nothing new about this. I think what's new is that people don't really know about these documents, and they don't know the church's teachings on the right to vote, how we should be voting. It's a moral obligation. And so that's what this is about here, to teach everyone that we have to have a voice.
And also important, I'm glad that they're watching EWTN, but if they're not watching EWTN the majority of the time or listening to Catholic sources and reading Catholic documents, they're going to get fed by the secular media. And what the secular media is going to tell them is that Planned Parenthood is all that and a bag of chips and then some. You have to vote abortion. Any woman in her right mind is going to vote pro-abortion. That's not the case. And a lot of women don't know. And so, for example, Planned Parenthood, some may still think, maybe by no fault of their own, that Planned Parenthood is an organization that promotes life and family, which is not true. Also, I know that you had an experience with the different women's marches, that some of the women that you bumped into actually said that they were pro-life even though they were at the women's march. And the women's marches have been funded by Planned Parenthood, NARAL, and it's all about abortion rights.
Yeah. So many people recently, just a couple of years ago, actually it was right after President Trump was elected.
It was the first one,
That was that first women's march. And I was there for the inauguration, and as I was heading to Union Station, started talking to some women, some of them thought it was all about equal pay for women. And I said, well, sure, we'd like to see if we're doing the same job, a woman and a man, of course you should have equal pay. But I said, that's not the agenda for this march. And they go, what do you mean? I said, it's being funded by Planned Parenthood and
George Soros and everybody else.
And all these other people. They're promoting abortion and contraception. They go, well, we don't believe in that. And I said, well, you shouldn't have been marching, and you shouldn't have had your daughters here marching because, and also too, some of the signs that they have are so vulgar.
Horrendous.
But very often, you know, well-meaning women get swept up into
the emotion.
Right. And they're not really paying full attention to what's the hidden agenda here. Although their agenda wasn't that hidden that day. It really wasn't.
But don't you think, and all of us have been so involved in various pro-life efforts, especially you, Janet, with your work with Rachel's Vineyard and your new book, Shockwaves. What I saw, and after interviewing you so many times, what I saw at the marches, the first and second march, were women, probably many of whom are post-abortive, don't you think?
Oh,
and
yeah,
so they're
absolutely.
angry and they haven't had healing yet.
Yeah. You know, because if they thought, like they bought the lie, have the abortion today, they went back to school and work, thought, no big deal.
Life will be wonderful.
Life will be
wonderful.
wonderful. Yeah. And of course, Planned Parenthood and all these organizations are selling abortion like it's no big deal. Even if they have some deep-seated feelings about, I feel bad, or this was a problem, they usually stuff those feelings way deep and down because it's very hard to admit those feelings when everyone else is saying it's no big deal. You think there's something wrong with you, so you suppress it. And so therefore, when other women stand up, like pro-life women, and declare that abortion is wrong, you're killing a baby, they get so vile and so angry because they haven't been healed. I mean, and that's why we talk about, you know, with the Silent No More, the women who have been healed, about their regret over abortion. And because they're not there to point a finger of condemnation. They're trying to reach out to their sisters and say, no, we understand.
We are with you.
We were where you were once, but now we're back with the mercy of God.
But all of this, don't you think, and Elena, I'll go to you to close before we wrap up for our break, this has to be encompassed in the process of thinking. As a Catholic voter, we have to think about all these things and connect the dots to the big picture.
Right.
And there's a good point about that because a lot of people think, oh, I believe that abortion is wrong, but I'm not going to force my beliefs on everybody else. I'll be very private and respectful about my beliefs. And you have to go beyond that and think, well, as a woman, you intrinsically are life-giving. How are you not going to vote for life, to protect life, to defend life? It's an intrinsic social good because you are protecting everybody else's life. The fundamental principle of society is life. Once that crumbles, everything else crumbles.
And if you're voting for pro-abortion candidates, you are inflicting your opinion on others because you're forcing abortion.
That's
and you're forcing us to pay for it, unfortunately, because of tax dollars.
That's right.
So we wanted to mention the Gospel of Life. That's a really, really important document. And again, you will hear us on this show repeatedly. I'd say for those old enough to remember LPs or records, we sound like broken records. But please, please, please take this seriously. And these words, as you read, this is from 1998.
That's right.
And it just sings of truth and reality of what we're facing now, as well as we've talked about Humana Vitae in the previous shows.
That's right. Now, the simple website that we have developed at Priest for Life, gospeloflife.net. They go there. First of all, the document itself is there. Our study guide, Living the Gospel Life, is there, and other commentary that we have. All the tools they need to really delve into this teaching and spread the word. Do
not let your vote be hijacked as a Catholic woman. Know your faith, vote your faith. Take it seriously. Pray about it. Do the research. Don't just read an article, which I used to do, right? We talked about this many times. Yeah. Oh, I have a well-formed conscience. I've read an article in USA Today or, heaven forbid, the New York Times, and I've come up with my opinion. There's a difference between conscience and opinion, and there's a difference between a formed conscience and a well-formed conscience. If your decisions, you think your conscience is well-formed, and yet if it is in disagreement with what the church says, that's not a well-formed conscience. It's formed, but it's not formed by the church. More on your vote as Catholics when we come back on this edition of The Catholic View for Women. I'm Teresa Tomeo, along with Elena Rodriguez and Janet Morana, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to the Catholic View for Women. We're so glad you're tuning in for this very important program. All our shows are important, but this one in particular, because we're helping you understand how we need to vote as Catholics, and in particular, Catholic women. Teresa Tomeo, Elena Rodriguez, and Janet Morana for this discussion. Janet, I want to start out with a quote from the Catechism. This is paragraph 2240. So many times people say, well, I'm not crazy about the candidates. It doesn't matter. I'm only one person. We have a responsibility as Catholics to vote. And here's what the Catechism says. Again, paragraph 2240. The Catechism of the Catholic Church says, submission to authority and co-responsibility for the common good make it morally obligatory to exercise the right to vote. And then the U.S. bishops have written, every voice matters in the public forum, every vote counts.
Right. And of course, we start with vote. Okay, and at Priests for Life, we have this wonderful brochure we put together, Voting with a Clear Conscience, and that's what we're going to review right now. And so the first idea is, when you say vote, well, step one is make sure you're
registered. Are you registered?
Are you registered to vote? And that might mean, well, maybe you moved since last election. You've got to re-register, make sure your registration is in order. But then what I tell people to do is, well, check with all the people on your Christmas card list. Talk to them, no matter what state they live in. Make sure they are registered to vote.
That's a great idea.
You will be surprised how many people you can talk to and say, oh, no, I didn't vote. Oh, I wasn't properly registered. So now is the time. Get out and register to vote. And don't forget to make sure people who are homebound, like your mom Teresa's in assisted living now,
right?
Make sure all those people register to vote and get them absentee ballots. And the same thing with people who are in nursing homes. And this is a perfect thing for Eucharistic ministers to do. If you're going to go for your communion call,
the homebound communion. I never even thought of that.
Yeah, you can bring them a voter registration form. You can help them do that, and then you can help them apply for an absentee ballot.
What a great idea!
Yeah. So this is, this is where everybody who's watching the show right now can do something to make sure everyone you know in your circle of influence is registered to vote.
Elena, the next one, voting in the primaries, we're looking at underneath here to get the right candidates. You mentioned absentee ballots, but a lot of people don't think about voting in the primaries as a big deal.
Sure, and you may dismiss it, and you may think, oh, okay, well, it's not that. No, every single election counts, and there is not just there's the local elections, there is the county elections, there's the state elections. There are so many elections going on. Really, it's an electoral season that goes throughout the whole 4 years.
Right.
So it's not like we can sit back and say, oh, it's just once every 4 years. There's a lot to do.
And then in the primaries and on these other elections, what you're doing is you're narrowing the playing field.
Well, you're trying to get a good pro-life candidate. I mean, very often, people who run for Senate or the House or even president at one day were on the local level. Remember, President Obama was a community organizer, right? And then first he was a senator and then president.
And then he went up the ladder. So likewise, we need to make
underneath even just voting and making sure you're registered to vote, we have make sure you're properly registered.
That's right.
Voting in the primaries, absentee ballots, which you mentioned, and also early voting, which you mentioned.
Well,
and then
right
praying.
now, while this show is airing, early voting has begun in some states. So again, you can go to our Priest Life website and you can see when did the early voting start in your state, because you never know what's going to happen on election day. If you can vote early, you should. And that's where, like, even I, Teresa, and probably you should do this, and Elena, because we all travel so much, maybe we should all request an absentee ballot, because you may not be home when election day happens. So you really want to request those absentee ballots now. You know?
Great idea. And then number 2, know the candidates.
Right. Well, again, at Priest for Life, we have a great website called votinginfo.org. Okay, and that's where you can find the positions on the candidates. Again, votinginfo.org. And with some of these candidates, it's very stark, the positions on these candidates. And some of them, if they've already been running before and they've been in office, you can get their voting record and see quite clearly where they stand. And another thing you can look at, you can go to that candidate's website and they have to disclose where they're getting funding from. The people who are donating to their campaign.
Follow the money.
Follow the money trail, because if Planned Parenthood and those people are donating to that candidate, then it's not a good candidate. Yes. But there's the Susan B. Anthony list, which is a pro-life C4. Well, if they're putting money into that candidate with National Right to Life, well, then that's a pro-life candidate. So these are things you can do your own research to really see where that candidate stands.
Yeah, and we'll put a link up to the SBA website, Susan B. Anthony list, because they actually exist to promote and to elect pro-life female candidates. This next point, Father Frank Pavone, our spiritual advisor, who's a regular guest on my program, Catholic Connection, always talks about this. And it's so, so important, this analogy. I love it. May I share it, what he says here?
Mm-hmm.
Suppose a candidate came forward and said, I support terrorism. Would you say, I disagree with you on terrorism, but what's your health care plan?
Right.
Of course not. Rather, you would immediately consider that candidate as disqualified from public office. His position, allowing the killing of the public, is radically inconsistent with public service. So it is with abortion. Abortion is no less violent than terrorism. Support for abortion is enough for us to decide not to vote for such a person. And then, Elena, you want to read that beautiful quote from John Paul II?
Oh, sure. And it says, above all, the common outcry, which is justly made on behalf of human rights, for example, the right to health, to home, to work, to family, to culture, is false and illusory if the right to life, the most basic and fundamental right and the condition for all other personal rights, is not defended with maximum determination.
Yeah.
This is from 1988, Christa Fidelis Laici.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Well, then, of course, you know, you have to weigh the issues properly. And again, in Living the Gospel of Life, the bishop's document, they talk about as life as the foundation of the house, the foundational issue. And you must protect life first, because then the other parts of the house could represent housing and education, the walls and the crossbeams and the windows, you know, immigration, all those other issues. They're important. But if you don't have life, well, you can't say to someone, well, you know, what's your education plan? That child has to, you know, pass the border of the womb first before you worry about any other immigration issue.
And you know, just from your recent book, your new book, Shockwaves, and people say, oh, you're a one-issue person when you're voting like this. But
right.
First of all, this is the issue. And then secondly, it has such an impact on everything. You can find a connection between abortion and so many of our societal ills, and we've done shows on this. But when you're looking at this issue, you have to, again, connect the dots and step back and look at the big picture, because abortion affects everything and everyone.
If you are into money matters, if you are into business, then think about the consequences of abortion when you start limiting the population, and then you don't have enough population to sustain elderly health care and retirement.
Well, Toys R Us said they closed because people weren't having enough children.
Exactly.
Right, to buy toys.
So no matter from which perspective you are looking, abortion is the #1 evil that we have in our country.
And it has this ripple effect throughout society. We have about 3 minutes left, and we have a lot of homework to get through. Are there other points that you want to make that came out in the
for example,
voting?
remembering that the party matters. And so, again, at votinginfo.net, we have a party comparison, both in English and Spanish. And you can see clearly how the platforms of these parties, the Democratic platform, clearly pro-abortion, and the Republican platform clearly is pro-life. And also, too, you know, we have a prayer campaign when you can go to electionprayer.com. Everyone should be praying daily for this election season. But I encourage everyone, though, with the party comparison piece, get that out to everyone you know, because the Democratic Party is not your grandpa's party.
Right.
Decades ago, it was a pro-life platform, but over the decades, it has changed radically, and it is now a 100% pro-abortion platform. Right. Yeah. And this party comparison compares on a number of issues. It's 501, what we call 501c3 friendly, which means you can distribute it in churches, but I say don't wait for your pastor's permission. Take it to where you go. Down at the soccer field, you know, to the parents standing on the sideline, wherever you're going, and whatever people you know. And actually, what I've done is I take my Christmas card list and I mail it out to all my friends and family.
I don't want to interrupt you, but we have just about a minute and a half left, and we do have these resources that are really important for our homework.
Time for homework. Number 1, read Living the Gospel of Life and use the study guide, and you're going to go to gospeloflife.net. Number 2, read Voting with a Clear Conscience, the brochure that you can contact us at Priest for Life, or go to prolifeproducts.org to order this. Number 3, go to electionprayer.com. You can download the prayer, say it daily. Number 4, votinginfo.net for the party comparison. And of course, finally, go to thecatholicviewforwomen.com, where you can get more information, of course, and sign up for our e-letter.
And I would highly recommend you get Janet's new book, Shockwaves, if you want to see how big the abortion issue is in terms of how it connects to everything and why it's so important and why it's so crucial as a Catholic to vote pro-life. You need to read that book. Thanks for joining us. We need your vote. God needs your vote. Life needs your vote. Don't let it be hijacked by the secular culture. Thanks for watching Catholic View for Women. I'm Teresa Tomeo, along with Elena Rodriguez and Janet Morana. We'll see you next time.